What was very clear to many of us in the core team, which was communicated to us by Nandan and the others, was that, hey guys, what you're doing is not just creating a unique number, but when you're building a population scale system, 0.1% is not okay. There are 1.5 lakh crore insurance rupees, 1.5 lakh crore insurance authorization has happened through this digital platform. In all the other systems that I spoke about that we were working on, whether it's Aadhaar or even this ABDM, whether it is UPI or any such thing, yes, trust is important. But when it comes to AI, it is far more important.
Welcome to Chai and Chips. Every episode this season, I have asked the guest a specific question. What must be true for AI to matter in this domain? We started with personal finance and investing. We went to cybersecurity, education, and today we'll talk about digital public infrastructure. Because ultimately, the deeper question across all of these domains is what must be true for India's infrastructure for everything to work seamlessly. Now, over the last decade or so, there are a few things which are remarkable about India. India built Aadhaar and UPI, world's largest biometric identity system and payment system. And that has transformed India. Personally, I have lived in several countries around the world, but I can safely say India is one of the best, or probably world class, when it comes to payment systems and identity systems. Now, we are trying to do the same thing with digital health record using Ayushman Bharat digital mission. So, amongst all the changes that are going to happen, the AI systems overlaying on the digital public infrastructure is very, very critical. And to have the conversation about it, I'm joined today with Om Prakash Subbarao. Om, for short, is someone who has lived his life intersection of global technology and India's digital public infrastructure like almost nobody I have met. He started his career in a bunch of different companies, including Yahoo. He was part of the core team that built and scaled Aadhaar and UPI. He is more recently involved as an advisor transforming the digital health in National Health Authority. And also, he's most recently the CEO of Core Labs, which is the collaborative research wing within Indian Institute of Science, trying to create or scale technologies and solutions within academia across industry. Now, in this conversation, what we're going to check and converse about is what must be true for our digital platforms to be really mattering for everything that is going to be built on top of it using AI systems. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Prakash. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you. I know you're super busy with the work that you do, and it's an honor for me that you could make it and spend some time in the early days of Chai and Chips.
Yeah, it's a pleasure interacting with you, and good to know about whatever you've been trying to do in the previous episodes, and very happy to share my experience in building the digital public infrastructure in India.
Yes, should be a very, very interesting conversation. And I wanted to start with the origin story of Om, right? You went from Yahoo to Aadhaar, UIDAI, National Health Authority, and now with Core Labs. People pick one domain and just stick with it their entire life, and you have jumped across so many. So what did you learn from each one of them that really you couldn't have done by being in one domain?
I have never really thought about it that way. And it's very interesting the way you are posing this question. If I have to reflect on whatever I have been doing in my career, let me go back and tell you, how is it that I joined Yahoo? I was doing pretty well. I was in Infosys. I was doing pretty well. I was working with Nandan and a brilliant team. Nandan was the CEO at that time. And at that point in time, Infosys was a company which was known for its global outsourcing models, and one of the pioneering companies. At that point in time, Yahoo was trying to set up an India operation because somewhere they realized that they are missing out on the bus if they don't have an India operation. And Jerry Yang and David Filo happened to visit, and I remember what they told me when when they were trying to sell this Yahoo job to me. They told me, okay, what is it that you are doing? You're developing maybe an excellent system for a Wall Street company and using the best of technology. So that should be giving you a lot of satisfaction, which it was. I remember Jerry Yang asking me this question: how many people do you think are getting impacted by the technology that you're building? I told him several of them. All the users of this bank would get impacted. And he said, okay, how many users do you think this bank has? Then he said, look, do you know what we do? If you build technology with us, whatever you build is going to impact 350 million people the next day morning.
Wow.
Whatever you build, whatever you do, next day morning, 350 million people across the world are going to be impacted, and they're going to see their work that you have done. Would this be of interest? So that was something which, completely had me sold.
Right.
And that's how I joined Yahoo.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, building Yahoo Mail, which was 350 million users, was a tremendous opportunity. And it gave me, I thought, the ultimate experience in the world. And I thought I had learned everything about building large-scale systems. That's the experience that Yahoo gave me until Aadhaar happened.
And you beat that scale by many times over.
Yes, indeed. We are talking of 350 million there. Here we are talking about 1.4 billion people. And of course, it was Nandan Nilekani, who in many ways is my mentor, also the mentor to several people in the industry. And I had the fortune of working with him in Infosys. And when he set out to do this Aadhaar experiment, it was only an experiment at that time. And that really excited me. And that's how I happened to join Aadhaar.
Okay. And from there to Core Labs.
Yeah, see, Aadhaar, Aadhaar, we did a lot of things. And we ended up building the largest digital identity platform built anywhere in the world. And it had several firsts. Also the first identity platform built in the public space. Otherwise, if you are using, let's say, otherwise, what's the identity that is there in the digital world? You have people ask you for your Google ID, your Facebook ID. That's what is the digital ID that exists in the world. And all of them are controlled by commercial enterprises.
Yeah.
With business interests. And they have complete control over that. Whereas here, this was something which was built in the public space by the government and the largest. So that was the difference. And in working on that, during the initial days, I remember Nandan went, I think, made a pitch to NASSCOM saying that all companies should send the best of their talent to work on this. I remember people from across the world were reaching out.
Yeah.
And I'm an alumnus of IISc. Right. And so that was my first point of call too. We were working on, one of the things that we worked on, open architecture was what we adopted right from the beginning. And when that was being done, we were looking at Hadoop, which we had worked on in Yahoo. And the first point of call for me when we were having problems in scalability and all that was IISc, because I'm an alumnus of IISc. And so right through my career, I have always been collaborating with IISc because that has a tremendous talent pool. And in many ways, after I did Aadhaar and all of that, then I thought it's best to go, it's payback time, and I should go back to my alma mater and kind of a role reversal and see how, in many ways, IISc is probably the world's best kept secret. Recently, we had Demis Hassabis, the AI guru visiting, and he also resonated with this view. He spent one day in IISc, and he also resonated with this view that IISc is probably the world's best kept secret. There's so much of talent, so much of work which keeps happening. And we really need to take that to the world, to the industry, make it relevant to the Indian ecosystem. So that's what I thought was a huge opportunity, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Makes a lot of sense. Agree. And from your shift to doing from 350 million people impacted in Yahoo to UID AI, building Aadhaar, what did you learn about scale and what building for scale requires that you didn't know until that point?
Well, in terms of technology, there were a few things, of course, which we could always, which we incorporated in Aadhaar, which was, a system built at scale. In terms of, I don't want to get into those details, but how do you handle a deadlock? Because many times during the initial days of the design, there were several enrollments which had happened and the packets had got stuck. We didn't know how to resolve that. We used one of the earlier concepts that I had come across when we were doing something similar in scaling a system in Yahoo. Some of those things, the technological hacks, we were able to incorporate here. But that's a very small thing. But what I realized in Aadhaar is that building something at scale is not just technology. Technology is just one small piece of the whole puzzle.
Really?
And what you do in the public space when you're trying to build public infrastructure at scale is a completely different ballgame. Technology is just one small piece of the puzzle, is what I learned.
And what else matters?
Yeah, see, there are several things, apart from technology, there is also the policy, and there are the different stakeholders, all with their own needs, interests, and compulsions, stated and unstated, which you have to take into account in building a large population scale system. This is something which I didn't know, and I think most of the team working on Aadhaar did not know, which we learned as we went along.
So let me wind the clock back to early days of Aadhaar, right? At least to me, it was not an obvious success. At that point in time, it was not that it would absolutely succeed. But when you all came together, UID AI, what is the core problem you were trying to solve? Not in terms of technology, but like you said, more about systems and trust and how to get it going. How did you look at it at that time?
Yeah, see, you got it right, Prakash, in the framing of your question. At the beginning, all of us, we thought that initially, and the whole of the country thought it was the same thing. It was just coming up with a number. It was just coming up with another identity card. That is what everybody thought. And everyone said, what is so big about it? No great shakes. All of us have a mobile number. And we all have, our mobile numbers are unique. Today we have 1 billion smartphones, 1 billion connections. So there is, it's a unique number. So what's so great? No great shakes. So what is the song and dance about an identity card with a unique number that you're trying to create? So that was the first question that we had to address. And in doing this, right from the beginning, what was very clear to many of us in the core team, which was communicated to us by Nandan and the others, was that, hey guys, what you're doing is not just creating a unique number. We might be called the Unique Identity Development Authority of India. That might be the name of the entity. And what we are building out is a UID, Unique Identification Number. Yes, but that is only one small part of it. The real thing that we are trying to do is to build a platform. Those days, the concept of a platform was never understood. It was not a number. We were trying to build an identity platform. A platform, and the benefits of the platform would be realized by the apps that you build on top of that, the applications in various areas, like, it could be PDS, the public distribution of food, that or other government schemes like NREGA. Or for that's the example in the public space, utilization of this identity platform. The other thing which now is very obvious, but those days, how long did you take to get a mobile connection? If you wanted to get a mobile connection before pre-Geo, pre-KYC, eKYC, how long did it take?
It took you weeks.
And how much did it cost? Today, how long does it take and how much does it cost the provider? So the application is really where Aadhaar took off. So it was very clear to us, and Nandan had made it evident to us, that first build the platform and stay below the radar.
Okay.
Put your heads down, build it out, and the apps come on top of it. That is when people, the benefits are realized. That is when the diffusion, the takeoff happens.
Quite a foresight. And what principles did you all build it with in terms of architecture?
See, there were a few things that were very clear from the beginning. One is that the architecture should be open. We did not want any proprietary vendors, or we wanted to ensure that it's a completely open, scalable architecture. And also there is privacy and security by design that is built in right from the beginning, and complete vendor neutrality. We didn't want to be locked into one particular vendor, whether it is biometrics or any other part of the system. We were very clear that this is something which we are building at scale. It should work at scale, and it should be based on completely open architecture.
Right. Yeah. So it is fair, open, and trusted by all.
Trusted by all, and privacy and security by design. That was the governing principle. Because one of the big challenges that we had to face was privacy. And once this started, everyone, there were huge lobbies, if I may call it that, which kept saying that no, it's going to be complete loss of privacy.
I remember that conversation. Yeah.
So that's a big force that we had to reckon with, and I can tell you stories about that.
Yeah, I agree. It is so difficult if you're going and
Taking a swing at that scale of a project that gets adopted by the entire population. There are requests, there are kind of pushback that you have to navigate through. Agree. And the other question I had, in fact, I was reading a book recently on thinking in systems, and it talks about every system behaves differently until you get to a particular threshold. And there are some failure modes that get exposed only at a particular scale. So are there learnings for you or observations or stories you have to share in terms of at a particular scale when Aadhaar reached, there were failures that got exposed, which kind of expanded your learning on how to build for those failure modes at scale?
Yeah, it may not be failure. Yeah, failure modes. Okay, I can give you some instances where what we learned right at the beginning was that we had to be very careful about edge cases. When I say,
how would you define edge cases?
Yeah, see, an edge case can be, for example, if you are capturing biometrics. There is some, 0.1% of failures that can occur. In any case, it's okay. I mean, when you're building a normal system, say it is okay. But when you're building a population scale system, 0.1% is not okay.
Yeah.
So you have to think of every edge case. And that's a challenge. Because when you are trying to conceive of a project, it's very hard for you to imagine every failure mode, every edge case. I'll give you an example. All of us knew that if some people are old, it's difficult to capture the biometrics, the fingerprints.
Against fade.
Yeah, it fades, etc. But we thought it's only the old people whose fingerprints fade, and therefore what should we do? All those things we discussed and tried to implement. Then somewhere at the back of our mind, we knew that if people start using their hands a lot, then maybe their fingerprints will be difficult to capture. But what it means when you're trying to actually build a system at scale is that if you don't factor in these edge cases, people, for example, the BD, the people who roll BD, their fingerprints are all completely gone.
Oh.
You will think that it is very difficult to capture. You'll have to do it in a specific way. You'll have to do it in a specific way. Those operators require a specific kind of a training. You'll think it's a very, very small fraction. How many BD rollers do you have in the country? 1.4 billion people. How many BDs are rolled? You'll think it's a very small case. But what will happen in practice, what we realized is that it will mean an entire district cannot get enrolled.
My God.
So how do you handle that? So one of the things, when you're talking about failure mode, I would say more designing for the edge cases becomes very, very important. So here we had to go, we did the entire proof of concept and pilot in 2 states, including Karnataka. And we did it in 2 districts, Mysore and Tumkur. And Tumkur, we had a very, very cooperative state government. Incidentally, what is very noteworthy is that if there is something good The good thing about the country is that across political parties, everybody cooperates. We had a different political party in the center and a different political party here in the state, but we had just no issues working. We got complete cooperation. And when we went to Tumkur, we asked, where do you have BD workers? We found that, in Tumkur district, there's a place called Bukapatna. And there are lots of BD rollers, and that's the place where BD rolling happens. So I went all the way, and my first visit to I went in a car. The whole village descended there. I mean, for them, they'd not even seen a car. Then I get down, and they ask me, "Who are you? Why have you come here?" And then I told them in Kannada that, look, this is who I am. Fortunately for me, one of them, had heard of Nandan, wonder of wonders.
Wow.
I mean, I was completely, taken aback. He said, "Oh, that project, I read that in the paper." And all of them cooperated. So we did all the POC, pilot, everything, taking that edge case into account. And then, we didn't have a problem after that. Otherwise, imagine the entire district would have been left out. And that can cause huge problems.
Yeah. Fascinating story. Yeah. So how long were you involved in Aadhaar architecting and scale?
I was involved in Aadhaar for about 2 years, right, during the entire POC and pilot. Right. And till then, I was completely involved. I was there full time, and there are a lot of people like me who volunteered to work on this. And
any other story would you like to recall from that time, like the BD roller story?
Well, Aadhaar is full of stories. Aadhaar is full of stories, and I really don't know which specific thing to recount. And as we go along, maybe if there is a context which triggers a particular story in my mind, I'll be happy to narrate that.
And now, after Aadhaar, you're advisor to National Health Authority.
Yeah.
And NHA and the rest of the team is using Ayushman Bharat digital mission as the objective, trying to do for health data what Aadhaar did for identity. So health data is far more complex and far more sensitive. What do you believe are the key problems that we are trying to solve there?
See, I had come across, since you asked me a story, can I narrate a story with respect to Aadhaar and then come back to this question? Because it's related to the question that you asked me. I said, let me come to a context and then tell you a story. See, there is privacy, right? And privacy of data becomes very important, whether it's Aadhaar or whether it is health data that you're talking about. Only the complexity, the degree becomes far more intense in the case of health records, like you pointed out. But when we started Aadhaar, there was a furor which was raised about privacy, loss of privacy and all that. And several seminars were organized and people were, talking about how the Big Brother is going to keep watching, and doomsday is what Aadhaar is going to usher in, etc. I happened to attend one of those seminars in Bangalore during the early days, the first few days of Aadhaar. And I was there, and I was there as an audience. It was a public lecture, a public session which was held in Bangalore. So speaker after speaker went about bashing Aadhaar and saying loss of privacy, and everybody, the entire audience, applauding at the end of the talk. That was the atmosphere. The last speaker was a retired Director General of Police of Karnataka, a very prominent person at that time, very well-known person. he was the last speaker. Okay? And when he took the stage, he said, look, I have been hearing from speaker after speaker talk about the loss of privacy because of Aadhaar and how, it's going to be completely chaotic and everyone is going to know who you are. They're going to track you, trace you. Let me give you my experience. He said, look, I belong to the police service. I just retired as the Director General of Police of Karnataka. And my son is in the US, so I happened to visit the US. And when I went to US, I was I didn't know what to do. I can't drive, so I'm confined to my house. So then my daughter-in-law came and said, why don't you don't you have friends here? Can't you connect with them? I told her, look, I belong to the civil service. All my friends are from civil service. All of them are in India. I don't have anyone here in the US. Oh, but I remember, one of my school classmates, he came to US. He was very close to me. His name was, X. But I lost contact with him, is what I told my daughter-in-law. She said, okay, and then went back. And 5 minutes later, she came to me and with the phone and said, please, this is his number. Please call him.
Okay.
I'm telling you an actual incident narrated by a retired Director General of Police of Karnataka. So then he said, oh, how did you trace him? So his daughter-in-law said, I found him on Facebook. His details are in Facebook.
Okay.
So he said, look, guys, what loss of privacy are you talking about? What is Aadhaar going to do? So, that was a story I wanted to narrate.
Yeah.
And, and when someone of that stature, from that profession, makes this statement, it had a huge impact.
Yeah.
Okay, now coming to your question on health data. Health data is far more complex. And some time back, about a year and a half back, I was in Lucknow. And there was NHA. There's a difference between my involvement in Aadhaar and this. Aadhaar was full-time, and here it's only part-time. I'm only volunteering, and my full-time job is with IAC. So when I was in Lucknow, we made a presentation on ABDM and how beneficial it is to link up records, etc. Then the chief medical officer of Lucknow, he stood up at the end and said, look, now you're talking about making health records available. Okay? But do you know that how sensitive it is? He said, look, I will have a patient who will have indulged when he was a kid, when he was in his youth, when he was a youngster. Today, he is, happily married. And all that is history. As a youth, maybe he had indulged. So now he comes to me for consultation with his wife, or he's in the hospital. His wife has access to. Should I make his records available to her? He's happily married.
What a question.
He said, case number 1. Case number 2, he said, look, there are people I treat. They had psychological problems. They got treated. When they were youngsters, they went through depression. They're completely cured. Now they're working in a organization. So, should that record, imagine if their previous record comes to the knowledge of, Prakash, Now, it's very normal for you or I to get angry in a work environment, and I raise my voice, shout at you. If you are my boss and you know this is my history, you can use it against me. You can say a mentally deranged person. So he said, how do you prevent all this? Case number 2. Then he said, case number 3. He said, you guys don't know what happens in the rural areas. He said, no woman, imagine the plight of a rural woman who, makes her, you can never say that, Prakash, you own your health record, so you have complete rights. Fine, it's on paper, but what happens in reality? In a village, in a remote village in Uttar Pradesh, do you think the husband does not have access to the wife's phone? And do you think the wife can say, I won't give you the password, I won't give you access to this record? Imagine what will happen if her entire record becomes available to the husband. So what are you going to do? So these are all practical problems.
All the corner cases.
Edge cases. So we had to design for all of this. Fortunately, we had an answer to all of this. As digital public infrastructure, we have the consent management framework where, you can give consent, selective consent. You can give consent only to a particular record, for a particular duration, for a specific purpose, read only. All those things are possible. And we have answers to all of them, but these are all concerns that people raise. So privacy is far more complex, far more intricate, and lot more edge cases. You have to be aware of practicalities and ground realities when you're designing the system at population scale.
Very well said.
And if you're, and see, a technologist like me, who has never seen a village. I first saw a village when I started working on Aadhaar.
Wow.
So we sit and design.
Correct.
We might design the best of technical systems, but if you don't factor in these situations, how is something going to take off, or how is something going to be used?
When you look at Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, or ABDM, one of the key tenets is interoperability.
Yes.
But when you look at the health ecosystem, the players within that, for their own benefit, would like to keep it as the data as siloed as possible. So how do you break that?
Yeah. Data is money.
Correct.
Yeah.
Even more so now.
Yes.
So how do you go about breaking that?
See, this is a question which everybody needs to put their heads together and answer. But there are answers to this. It's a combination of, a stick, a carrot, etc., which will work in situations like this. But ultimately, for anything to succeed, there should be benefits. There should be use cases. There should be pull. You cannot have a push. Push works up to a point, and beyond that it fails. So the trick in increasing adoption or increasing diffusion is to have more use cases. For example, address the problems, solve the problems that exist in healthcare. Then automatically this sharing starts happening. For example, now if you go to a hospital, and we used to give this example of a public hospital, but just last week I went for my routine health checkup to a diagnostic center. I go there at 9 o'clock in the morning. I find a huge crowd at the registration desk at a private diagnostic center. Imagine what's happening in the public hospitals. You just go and look at the registration center. There's big chaos. Why can't we simplify that? At the end of the day, what is the transaction that is happening at the registration desk? Now, they are, you're going, somebody goes there for, a patient goes there for treatment. He has an ailment. So he has to say, look, I have a stomach pain. So I need to consult a stomach, whatever, that particular doctor. And that's all the information that I need to give if I'm going for that consultation. And what will the hospital want to know? They'll want my details, like my name, my age, and my identity, etc. So, and of course, there's a payment involved. If it's a public hospital, there's a nominal payment, and sometimes it is not. There's no payment also, it is free. But there's payment involved. All this can be done digitally. All information is available. You have all the information. For example, my name, my age, my identity, everything is there in Aadhaar. And then you have this Aadhaar, which is the health identity number. When you have that, if you have the Aadhaar number, you give the number and all the details, including the previous visit, everything you should be able to retrieve.
True.
And you have UPI. You just make the payment. Only thing that you'll need to do is say, this is my ailment. That is the only piece of data that gets exchanged at the registration counter, which did not exist in the digital world. Once that information is exchanged, you can go straight to the doctor. So if you are able to solve this problem, then automatically lot of people will start saying, I want to use this system. Would you want to stand in a queue jostling that crowd there for 2 hours, or would you just want to straight go to a doctor? Which option would you want? So therefore, ABDM has this use case of scan and share. You just go to a hospital, there's the QR code, everything, you scan and then all your information is exchanged. So you make your payment and go straight to the doctor.
Very interesting.
And in Bangalore, it's implemented in several hospitals. In KC General Hospital, for example, in Malleshwaram, it is implemented in several hospitals.
Right.
So the moment you start having these use cases develop, there is a pull, and then automatically adoption happens. And like you have 1.4 billion users of Aadhaar, you'll have 1.4 billion users of ABBA and the digital infrastructure.
Very nice.
Insurance is another case in point where you can have
connection as well.
Yeah.
And when you look at this whole system of Ayushman Bharat digital mission, it can be as foundational as Aadhaar was in terms of identity. So what must hold true for that to happen? And what could be the potential risk that might prevent it from happening?
See, some potential risks, particularly because now we have AI, is deep fakes and all of that. And I also alluded to the fact that there is, apart from ABDM, NHA also has this PMJ, the health insurance program. Insurance is a big factor. Now, there can be an apprehension that if I make all my health data available to my insurer, then my premium might go up. Or actually, it's the other way around. The underwriting, all that becomes lots easier, and the insurance premium should come down. But there is always this apprehension, the initial apprehension, which might, put some, I would say, initial obstacles which you'll have to cross before it is universally adopted.
Right.
And then, Aadhaar is a centralized system. And here, the other difference is that you have a central Aadhaar database. We have a CIDR sitting in Bangalore and Delhi. But CIDR is the data repository, central data repository, the data center. I use the acronym, so I just explained that. Now, in the case of NHA, it is completely a federated model that exists. Because, see, today, you cannot expect every hospital to come on to one common platform. They use their own health systems.
Right.
Diagnostic centers have their own health systems. Hospitals have their own health systems. You can't expect them to change it. So all you need to do is to make them interoperable, much the same way as UPI has done for
Payments.
It's the same concept of a UHI, which Universal Health Interface, which is going to make everything, which is making everything interoperable
Across systems.
across
systems.
health systems. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So much going on in the digital public infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see, actually people wouldn't know, but there's a huge amount of information. I would say that there is information asymmetry because as we speak, there are 100 million hospital admissions which are being done through PMJ.
I did not know that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's information asymmetry. These are the latest numbers. And there are 1.5 lakh crore insurance rupees, 1.5 lakh crore insurance authorization has happened through this digital platform.
Amazing.
Okay.
That is the Aadhaar platform you're talking about.
And that's the PMJ. PMJ, the health insurance platform that I'm talking about. If you're talking about the Aadhaar, the ABDM platform, you will be surprised to know what's the population of India, 1.4 billion people. More than half of them have Aadhaar. You and I don't. But half the 87 crore. Yes.
Oh, wow.
So, and there are, and see, there is and about 94 crore health records have been linked already.
I certainly don't have my data clear on these.
And see, in the case of the health system, there are two other problems that are being solved because of ABDM. What we call the registry problem. See, there was a very famous case in Bangalore. Somebody used to claim to be a doctor. He had a board outside his clinic saying Dr. X. And there'd be a huge crowd and he'd be treating patients until someone reported him. He was not even a doctor. He was not even a matriculate.
Wow.
This is one case that I know of which got reported in Bangalore several years ago. I'm sure there are hundreds and thousands of such cases in the country. Health. If someone claims, I say I'm Dr. Om Prakash, how do you know?
Agreed.
So, and somebody says, okay, this is a hospital, we have all the equipment. How do you know? So, has someone audited? What NHA is doing is building health registries for this. The HPR, that is the Health Professional Registry. If you are a doctor, and there is a registry which is being formed, which will validate, yes, you are a doctor. If you are a paramedic, you feature in that.
Okay.
So, and you'll be surprised to know that 9 lakh health professionals are already registered, identified and registered on this registry.
Incredible.
And health facilities, hospitals, diagnostic centers, there are about 5 lakh of them which have been identified. And so these are the numbers.
Mind-blowing.
This is the progress that India has made, but it's a well-kept secret.
Well-kept secret, yeah. I hope people...
And hopefully a podcast this will make people aware of the tremendous progress that's happening in the country because of the DPI.
Great.
And whatever I'm talking about is the public rails that are being laid, but on top of it, there is private innovation happening because the policy has always been, public rails which will, enable private innovation.
Yeah, it's happened in, of course, so many startups on payments and beyond.
Correct.
It can certainly happen in health and beyond.
Yeah, even in health. You see, now there are several healthcare apps, what we call the PHR apps, which are there on the phone. So which will seamlessly connect. Imagine all your health records being available on your phone. So that's what these PHR apps do. There are private, applications, apps which are there.
Right.
And the business model for them is that they offer you additional services. You'll be able to find availability of beds. You'll be able to identify specialists in your area, fix appointments. All those things are enabled on these apps. So that gives you a big business model, and like you have all these Google Pays, Paytms, which are using the digital infrastructure built for payments. Same way, all these PHR apps will use the ABDM infrastructure and monetize.
Very cool. So that's a...
And the market value, I was just figuring out somewhere, of all the companies which have been created in India using DPI, all the DPI that I'm talking about is about $150 billion.
Very cool. Yeah.
All these companies put together. None of these companies existed before the digital public goods came in, right?
Very true. Very true. Yeah. It's amazing.
That's a good segue into a set of rapid fire questions, which could be
Fun a little bit about your domain and...
Well, rapid fire is always scary, but shoot.
Yes. All right. The first one, Om, is what is harder to scale? Technology or trust?
It's, I would say, trust in technology.
Very interesting.
Because trust in non-humans is very, very hard.
Yeah. Insightful. One myth about Aadhaar you wish people would drop.
Aadhaar card?
Okay. Go 100% digital.
No, there was nothing when we started called an Aadhaar card. Original Aadhaar card, what is it?
Agree. Did not exist.
It does not exist.
Yeah. So one design principle every large-scale system should follow.
Openness.
well said. Aadhaar or UPI, which one changed India more, you think?
Chicken and egg, which came first?
Yeah. Both are important.
Yeah.
If Aadhaar had failed, where would India be today?
Well,
I think you partially answered that question.
if fire was never invented, would the world exist? Aadhaar, India cannot exist without Aadhaar.
Yeah.
Aadhaar and India go together, at least for me.
Very well said. The AI work happening in India that nobody is paying enough attention to.
The India is becoming a use case factory.
We'll talk more about it.
Use case factory of the world.
Yeah, agree. Last question.
The question about India's technology future that keeps you up at night.
How do you make this technology benefit 1 billion people in their everyday life?
As in AI.
Any technology, AI, all the technologies, including AI. Yeah, how do you make that relevant to population at scale? To address their everyday problem.
Yeah, it's a great...
It could be healthcare, education, it could be anything.
Yeah, it can make a material impact to the nation.
That's when I would say, technology has arrived.
Agree.
Okay.
So we talked about Aadhaar and Ayushman Bharat for large part of the conversation thus far. One part that I really wanted to dig into is R&D in India, right? You're CEO of Core Labs that talks about or does collaborative research between academia and industry. And India today has 20% of the global chip designers. We have fantastic institutions, including IISc. We have elite talent, software, and many other technology areas. But having said that, the patent data for India, the R&D investment overall, especially in private sector, and the product companies that have come out and become globally material from India, that's sobering data. So from your vantage point of Core Labs, what is your diagnosis of it?
Yeah, I would say, the problem is twofold. It's very easy to say, that industry in India is not contributing to the research that's happening in the country. It's very easy to, make that statement. But I think we should also step back and see if research that's happening is relevant to the industry in the country.
Right.
And to that extent, I would say that we should try and, make it more relevant. That's when, we will have industry participation in the research. For example, we should stop, just aping the successful models or the Western world. Why are we so hung up on, building large-scale models? Why are we so worried about, why is India not developing a large LLM? Why are we worried about that?
And why do you think it doesn't matter?
Because I think that's highly commoditized, or it is going to become a big commodity in the future.
Right.
What is very important is to build on your strengths. See, India has, we are 1.4 billion people and we are such a huge market. Our strength is the data. And for anything to be successful, it's very easy to build models. How will a model be successful? What is the training data you will use? India is sitting on a gold mine. Mm-hmm. We have data like nobody has, right. Whether you talk about healthcare or any other field. Mm-hmm. The moment you open up this data, the moment you make the data available, like for example, if you just take the PMJ insurance claims data or any insurance provider sitting on a mountain of data. Right. If that data is made available to the researchers, then we will have research work which is more relevant to the country and the Indian economy. And that's when, private investment also starts happening. So it's both ways. Right. If research is made relevant, industry will also start contributing, and industry also should start, extending their hand. And today it is happening, but it's not happening at the speed and volume which, will actually be required. Yeah. And one of the things that is driving this push from all sides, you should make it, at the end of the day, Prakash, everybody will ask, what's in it for me?
True.
Okay. So structurally, there are certain things that are happening. For example, earlier on, the government used to fund all these institutions, IISc and IITs. There used to be grants. So now several of these schemes of the government are coming with what they call the 80-20 rule or something like that. They say, which simply means I'll give you 80% of the money, you get 20% from the industry.
So skin in the game.
Yeah. So now automatically it's pushing all the academic institutions to start looking at the industry, because if you want that 80, you have to get the 20. To get the 20, you have to make your research relevant. Okay? So now everybody, structurally there is this push which is making sure that everybody converges. Now what's in it for the industry? For the industry, now if they have to, for example, build some capital goods, there's a huge investment that is required. And today there's a big dependence on China. Okay? The government has several schemes. Like, for example, in the area of critical minerals, there is this National Critical Minerals Mission. And similarly, the Ministry of Heavy Industries also has some schemes. There are several of these schemes where the government is saying, now we'll invest, we will enable development of capital goods. Okay, we'll give you 80%. Get 20% from the industry. So for the industry, now they are able to get access to this machine by just contributing 20%.
Okay. So capital goods in semiconductor terms could be machines.
Yeah, basically, yes.
Okay. So that can also be shared.
Yeah, that's going to be shared. And then there's a model. There are various models depending on the schemes. If you put in 20%, then you get the first machine. Or you might get, license for, let's say, the first 10 machines. There are various models that one can work out. But broadly, these are the contours of the structural changes that are happening, which will hopefully, fuel the R&D investments that are happening from the industry in the country. But we still have a very long way to go.
Yeah. And from the time at Core Labs, are there, like the models you talked about, are there some areas where you're really hopeful that it would pick up pace in the future? Either in terms of models or in terms of use cases that you see emerging?
Yeah, there are various areas where it will really happen, and it will happen sooner than later. And one area that I can think about is critical minerals itself. Because what is happening is critical minerals and rare earths, by definition, they're very hard to they're very hard to find. And you need to have the process and technology to, one, recycle so that you have a green economy. These batteries, what do you do with them, and recycle of them, etc. So that's one. And then how do you develop a process to extract the technologies, the machines for that? Currently, there is a huge dependence on other countries, including China. And with the changing geopolitical scene, everybody has woken up. And the government has also come up with this National Critical Minerals Mission and identified centers of excellence for critical minerals. IISc is one of them.
Okay.
Where a lot of work is happening, and I see green shoots there, and I'm very hopeful that big things will happen in the foreseeable future.
Very nice. So there's one aspect I wanted to double click into is the answer you provided in the rapid fire is India is a use case factory when it comes to AI. How do you think about it?
Yeah, because see, now if you look at AI, what are the things that make something successful? Of course, it is the model that you come up with. Then you will have to have the infrastructure to host that, maybe the data centers or so. And then you will also have to have the data.
True.
Right? If you, at a very high level, I'm saying these are three things that are required. And today, if you see companies which are becoming big players in this, whether it's Google or Microsoft or anybody, they're all people who have access to all of them.
That's true.
They have access to models, they have access to data, then they have the infrastructure because they have the data centers. Yeah. And you need the compute, these chips. Fortunately, what's happening in the country is because of this national AI mission, there's a lot of the infrastructure part which is being taken care of by the government. And once that is there, and I really think that these large models will get commoditized. And small models, 7 billion parameters, up to 7 billion parameters, there are several of them which are being developed as we speak. In several specific domains.
Which means vertical domains.
Vertical domains. Okay. It could be HR, it could be any finance, various domains. They are being developed as we speak. And that together with the volume of data that we have is all the recipe that we need for success. And that's why I said, India is really becoming the use case capital of the world, because we can test out all these things very quickly. We have the infrastructure, the compute which the government is putting in place because of this National AI Mission. And the AI Mission is also promoting these small models. We have the data, and then we have, the academic institutions like the one I come from, the Indian Institute of Science, which has the knowledge power to make all this happen. Therefore, I think India is really the use case capital of the world.
And that's a fantastic summary on what we could potentially do in AI use cases. The one question I had was, when you talk about data, I agree there's a lot of data generated by 1.4 billion people in a variety of different use cases. But where, if a startup is building today in health or any other area, where could they find the anonymized data to build their platform?
Today there are several data sources that are available. If specifically talking about healthcare also, there is a move by, thanks to the DPDP Act, which has come into picture already. Particularly for research and all that, there is a provision to make that available. And soon, I think, anonymized data is going to be made available. There are attempts which are being made. And once you have this anonymized data, I'm sure lots of these startups and large corporates, everybody can make use of that. And therefore, we have 1.4 billion people to make use of that. And that is the recipe for India becoming the use case capital of the world.
Yeah. Agreed. And moving on, the last part of the conversation I wanted to explore was to kind of use your experience across Aadhaar, National Health Authority, and academic institution like IISc to really look at future forward. When you look at AI systems, what could some of the experiences you have had, how could that be used to build AI systems? So the first question I had in that regard was, when you look at, suppose in vertical domains, there are systems getting implemented, financial services, healthcare, it could be logistics, transportation, everywhere, right? And if you layer AI systems on top of it, what lessons from building Aadhaar you could extrapolate or you would find appropriate in building those kind of AI systems?
Yeah, see, I think one, of course, technology everybody focuses on.
True.
Okay, so while you're doing that, what we should also focus on is trust. Because if you are trust is very, very important. I should underscore that. Right. See, in all the other systems that I spoke about that we were working on, whether it's Aadhaar or even this ABDM, whether it is UPI or any such thing, yes, trust is important. But when it comes to AI, it is far more important. Let me give you an example. It's a fact that every day there are hundreds of people who are involved in fatal accidents on the road, and nobody bothers about that.
Right.
It does not even, maybe it's some inside page news story, or doesn't even make it to the inside pages of any newspaper.
Sad, but true.
Yeah, but that's okay. We don't bother about it. But if there is one fatal accident involving an autonomous car,
Yeah. It'll be a big deal.
it'll be a big deal.
Yeah.
And, that car maker will have to go back to the drawing board. I mean, trust is all very, very important. And when you asked me that rapid fire, I said trust in technology. See, trust in non-humans is a very, very hard commodity.
Yeah. Agreed.
Because all of us think it's human to err. You will forgive a human being who makes an error, who makes a blunder. But an agent?
No way.
So, when you're building your AI systems, please pay attention to building the trust. Otherwise, whatever technology you build, you're not going to succeed.
And if you're building for population scale, with that premise of building for trust, how could you go about it?
Yeah, see, I would say you should approach it two ways. One is, don't boil the ocean. You're building a population scale system. Have the entire architecture clear and laid out, with all the edge cases, like the ones that I mentioned to you in the case of Aadhaar. All of them thought through, spend a lot of time. See, if in building a normal system, if you spend X amount of time, spend at least 4X the amount of time in the initial architecting and design. It's very important for you to be successful if you are building a population scale AI system. Think through all the edge cases. Then don't boil the ocean. Start small. Test it out. Gain the confidence. Build the trust. And then take the next big step.
Right. Yeah.
That's the approach that I would advocate.
And you think...
because one failure can be very, very costly.
Yeah, agree. Reputation-wise, even progress-wise, you can mar several years or weeks of progress if you don't pay attention to trust.
Yeah, how many Tesla fatal accidents have you had? How many, Ford fatal accidents have you had? We only hear about Tesla.
Yeah, agree.
It will be in single digits, but
still, people pay attention to it.
Yeah. I took a ride on Google's Waymo in San Francisco. It was quite an experience. It was like a mind-changing experience.
Yes.
The technology is awesome and never felt unsafe. But I agree with what you're saying. Any gap in autonomous vehicle would be reported and talked about much more than a human being creating that accident.
Correct.
Yeah. And to that end, you think...
On using AI, on this example, it's about 1.5 years back, in Arizona, I took this ride.
Right.
And I should narrate this thing. A very, very funny thing happened. There were, I and some of my relatives were also there. So we took two different vehicles. My wife and I in one, and my relatives, a couple of them in the other. We went two ways. We went to a mall and then took the ride back to the hotel. When we went, it went one behind the other and parked. On the way back, what happened was these guys went straight. Same route, they went straight. Then all of a sudden, our car took a right turn in one of the side streets. I got panicky. I said, what happened? And new technology. Yeah. Then I found there was a cop vehicle there with lights blinking. In front, they had pulled up another vehicle. They were doing some checking. This car, you won't believe it. It took a detour. Went in one of the side streets and then came back to the main street.
Oh, wow.
That's the amount of AI that's built into that.
Yeah.
Avoiding a cop car.
Yeah.
This was in Arizona about a year and a half back.
Okay. Okay.
So once you take that ride, because they have thought about this edge case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm riding in that. Now I have that trust.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't bat an eyelid to get into the next Waymo.
Agree.
So you should think through all these edge cases. That's why I gave you this example.
Very true.
And it makes me think back even at my Waymo ride in Los Angeles. It navigated for an hour in peak traffic. We had taken about 5 o'clock and reached around 6 o'clock. And at no point were we unsafe. And it took all the signals and stopped. There was a time when a couple of signals were turning yellow to red. And in one case, it passed it because it judged that it would be passing before it turns red. And the other one, it stopped because it felt that there was no time to cross it before turning red. So I felt the nuanced way that technology has evolved is quite something. Yeah. It was, I would say, a time when I changed my mind on a technology. I never was high on autonomous cars saying, can they work in all situations? They brilliantly did in that particular. And like you said, I would use it as well in future because of that experience. So when you look at AI systems, whether it's large or small, do you think governing them is going to be more difficult than the traditional systems?
I would not say it will be more difficult. I would say that it is going to be different. Because the standard rules of the game will probably not apply there.
Right.
So you have to figure out what are those differences. And again, I keep going back to those edge cases. You have to think through all those edge cases and then design governance mechanisms for that as well.
Okay.
It's going to be different, but it's not going to be more difficult. No, it's not going to be difficult. It's just going to be different. And you need to pay attention to that is what I would say.
And from the point of view of testing out the edge cases and taking time, building from small, are there ways, or would you have advice to technologists and policymakers building such AI systems so that they build for population scale without encountering issues?
Yeah, if you're building AI systems, I would want to go back and say the same thing, that don't just copy some successful things that you keep hearing about. Don't just copy the West or what's happening there. Think what is appropriate for you. Don't chase model building.
Right.
Don't worry about that at all. And be aware of your reality and what works today, what works very well today will not work tomorrow. Be aware of that. For example, we keep talking about demographic dividends, and I kept telling you 1.4 billion people, so we have all the advantage. But if you should use it right.
Agree.
If you don't use that right, then going back to what the IT service companies are all today worried about is what's going to happen to all of them, because everything is going to be done by agents.
Yeah, agree. And if I were to ask you,
in simple terms, what must hold true for AI systems to operate at population scale in India, how would you answer about it?
Yeah, what must happen is that you will have to India. I remember going back to my school lesson. Is they said that you have unity in diversity, and the same thing you should be cognizant of here. While you are building a model, please be aware that you'll have lots of diversities that you will have to deal with. And unless you are cognizant of that and unless you build it into your design, you're going to face implementation issues.
Right. This is a fair point. So many languages.
Yes.
Yeah. So many different
cultures.
Yeah. Yeah. Geographies. Yeah. Agree.
So we need to be cognizant of the diversity, even when you're trying to build a population scale system.
Yeah. One of the biggest constraints for the system.
Correct.
Yeah.
It cannot be a one big size which fits all. Won't work.
True.
I'm telling you this based on my learnings from my first project, that's Aadhaar. Name Aadhaar itself,
Yeah. What a fantastic name.
Yeah.
Fantastic name.
There was a lot of work that went into coming up with that name.
Oh, is that so?
Yes, it didn't happen by accident. No.
Okay. How did you come about?
There were a couple of names which were shortlisted, and then there was market research done, and one of the criteria was that it should mean the same thing in all Indian languages, and we should have a word which all Indian languages can relate to. And it should also be something which denotes what we are actually doing, which is building the foundation.
Yeah.
So a lot of work went into that. There was some market study done. And I told you we did proof of concept pilot and all that. And this is a little known fact that in some of this testing of names, all that happened in some villages in Andhra Pradesh.
Okay. What a cool story. Amazing, yeah. The name itself says it all. You don't need to describe anything else. Yeah.
So you should be cognizant of that when you're designing any population scale system.
So we are coming to the end of the show, Om, and I ask a final question to all my guests, which is as follows, that India's foray into technologies like AI is much less about domestic growth. It's our place in the global technology ecosystem. If you fast forward 10, 15 years, from your vantage point, where do you see India? And what needs to happen today to make that vision a reality?
Yeah, I would say that India would probably be a leader in technology, at least in a few areas. We already are leaders in digital public goods. We have done that like no other country in the world has done. And the fact that we were also able to present this in the United Nations, I think a couple of years back, and several other countries are now adopting this. India is already a leader in that space of public rails and private innovation. This will only get accelerated, and we will have a lot more private innovations happening on the public rails that we have laid. I already told you that the monetary value is about $150 billion. And I only see this, multiplying in the years to come.
Yeah.
And I see that the rest of the world will probably follow on all of this. But in order to do this, we should make some investments in the infrastructure. And while the government is doing some of it, I think a lot more needs to be done. in terms of the compute infrastructure itself. We can't just say that no, there is a national AI mission and they're buying so many GPUs and things will happen. We can't leave it only there. We'll have to have everyone chipping in. For example, I think the government also has this CSR scheme. And I'm encouraging some companies to start investing CSR money into buying some of this compute infrastructure for the academic institutions. And point I'm making is we shouldn't leave it only to the government, and there should be focus from the industry, from the government, from all sides in building the infrastructure that is required for us to really,
Make the most of it.
Yeah, make the most of it and get the place that we deserve.
Fantastic place to close. Om,
I learned so much from this conversation. You are an inspiration. Is there anything that we missed that you wish to cover?
Well, you made me reflect a lot, Prakash, on whatever is happening in the country in the technology space, and you made me peek into my own journey, something which I had never really had the chance to do. Just that kept going, and this opportunity to reflect is something which I really cherish, and I love this interaction.
Thank you. Thank you.
And wish you many more successful podcasts.
Yes.
In this initiative of yours.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Om.
And for our audience, thank you for watching Chai and Chips. We are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other channel that you listen to your podcast or watch it. If you like it, please subscribe to our channel and leave a review. If you like a particular episode, request you to share with family and friends, as it helps us spread the word. On that note, see you next time.